moving from the regular settings to inclusive education, though I usually have my reservation about inclusive education system in Nigeria. I do have my reservation about it. Okay, well, the reservation is that I don't think, will not think there is no place that inclusive education is functioning in Nigeria. Forget what people tell you. If you actually meet professionals in special education, they will tell you that inclusive education is not in existence in any way in Nigeria. Because if you are talking about inclusive education, you're actually talking about having every student, regardless their form of disability, regardless of their social status, learn together in the same classroom with the so-called normal student, that's the regular student. That means in a class, we have a person with visual impairment, a person with hearing impairment, learning disability, those with intellectual developmental disability, and the regular student in the same class. Please, can you point to any school or doing that? Though they will tell you that they are running inclusive education, or they will even have the name written that Montessori inclusive education, whatever. But when you get there, you will realize that what they are practicing is integration. It is mainstreaming, not inclusive education. Education generally has its challenge, even for the regular student. But that of persons with special need is somehow overwhelming, in the sense that, one, you have to talk about awareness issue, you have to talk about availability of materials. You also have to talk about the manpower or the trained teacher. How many specially trained teachers do we have in these mainstream settings? Then you also talk about affordability, because they will actually tell you that where education is free, as it is in the national policy on education, that the basic education is supposed to be free. But if you go to these schools, students still pay. Even the special needed students, but they still pay a fee. When you talk about material, please, well, I've always want people to also take note of this. But when you talk about material, then you talk about the peculiarity of that particular special needs individual. In the sense that a person that is hearing impaired, that is for someone that is having issue with hearing, has no problem with print, compared to someone with visual impairment that will always have a problem with print. So you must look for a modified material, like an adapted material for that person, to be able to access similar information in his own way. Also, a person with hearing impairment, if you are talking about things that has to do with hearing, maybe we are talking about phonetics, for example. So, you know, oral English, it is what you hear, you produce. So for the person to be able to make right choice when it comes to vowel sounds, consonant sounds, definitely the person must be provided with accessible material, as with material that will conform with his own uniqueness, with his own kind of impairment. But when it comes to person with a hearing impairment, when we have categories. Okay. There are some that are deaf mute. So they don't even have an issue with maybe pronunciation of an oral symbol. So what they only have to look, understand, and then make a right choice in a print also. I think you are following me. Yes. When one writes, those that are hard of hearing, or maybe they are only deaf but not mute, so they are the ones that we can say, okay, they will have to also reproduce the sound. But the issue here, as you have pointed out, is that someone that is congenitally deaf, that is, the person is born deaf, the person have never heard any sound. So how will the person be able to actually reproduce that same thing in terms of exam? So that is why we need a specially trained personnel. So that was why I made mention of issues about trained personnel. So when we have a specially trained personnel that have been introduced to these students, or that is taken with these students, so the person know the type of words to use, or the type of sign to use, because for every word there is a sign for it. Or just like a boy, or this is boy. So when you do this, or the student know that he or she is to pronounce boy, or maybe you finger spell it, then you know that this is what you are actually trying to say. On the part of the government is trying. Government is trying in the sense that if you go to these schools, yes, but the UBEC fund is there, okay, it's being released, but the aspect at which we have a problem with government is that when you release the money, you don't follow it up. So, you don't care if the money is actually being used for the purpose at which you are released it or not. You don't care. So that's the area at which I have problem with the government. But I want everyone to know that government cannot do it all in terms of funding for schools, even the regular school. Government cannot do it all. That's why we have the civil society organization. That's why we have the NGOs. So government cannot do it, but the fund is always there. Government always release it, and there are some administratives of some schools that will not even bother to even assess this money, because some of them are not even aware of the money. The first thing in overcoming this problem is making provision for specially trained teachers in these subject areas. Like mathematics, yes, with an issue that could be supplemented if materials are being provided as accessible materials are available in various schools, and then there are specially trained teachers. But when it comes to English, is a very difficult issue as an issue. In the sense that there was a time in the past when we have to make a position paper for some students at the University of Jos, that's the UNEPS students, on the issue of English. Because English, or during exam, that's why if you look at it, there are about 4 to 5 aspects to it. You have the oral English, you have the comprehension, you have the summary, and the essay. And if you look at it, as we said earlier concerning the categories of person with hearing impairment, sign language is their own mode of speaking, is their own mode of communication. But you know that even the sign language is even limited, in the sense that there are words that has the same sign. For instance, this means no, that's KNOW, and this same sign also means think. This sign means can, and it also means able. For someone who has never been introduced to oral sound before, so the person who can just translate it to be I able to do it, instead of I can do it. I able to do it. So, and that's what the person will write for during exam, because it is limited with the same sign for the same words. Also, about 28% of words that are signed have the same sign for past, present, and the past participle. So how will the person also will be good in terms of tenses? So that's the issue that is very difficult to surmount in English. For the visually impaired, I have said it, if specially trained teacher in mathematics are being provided one, and then modern and the right equipment for mathematics are being provided, a person with visual impairment can actually do perfectly well in the mathematics, perfectly well. According to Professor Okudiwe, she said something that the basic need for learning is having interest in learning. That's key one to learn, as in or to learn a subject in a school. Yes, well, learning is there. But even though you have the interest and then everything you have are not being provided, well, so how will you exert? If you place them in terms of maybe going vocational training, you will see them doing well. Is it not in Sweden that when we learn that the high this, they are the ones that are even when the as in the factory where these wristwatches that are being produced, that they produce wristwatches, the work clock, or the people that we are even calling with the mentally retarded here. So that's the problem. It is placement issue. It's placement issue, and that is a bigger problem when it comes to even person with special needs generally, because you even get to some schools, as in we are saying, because the person is blind, you won't even take note of other disability that the person could be having. Maybe the person is also having hearing impairment. Because I have a friend like that, that is deaf blind.
Wow.
Yes, that is deaf blind. But if not because of that person's mother's personal interest and the intervention, that guy might still be at home. But we thank God that the guy is a master of that today. Many regular schools today, when we have a lot of persons with disability there, as in hidden disabilities that you don't know, but they are in this school, or you think that what they are doing well just because it's a private school, so the parents they are paying their school fees, so the management they are just promoting with the child, or if the child is not learning anything in the school, like people that are with dyscalculia or maybe with dysgraphia, so because they will just be there, the child will just be pushing them, and when at the end of the day, when the child comes out, he finds it difficult to go into tertiary institution or to move to another level. So placement is also a very key issue when it comes to all these persons with disabilities. But the teachers must be checked again, as in there should be proper check to first verify that are these teachers supposed to even handle with these children? Is it because they are just holding special education with certificates so they can just function there, or are they special educations or teachers in this particular field? You know, because we have different field in a special education, and then okay. With someone that is just a GNC person, should the person will be in that particular school? And mind you, every school also need a clinical psychology, because they all need a psychologist. Every school needs a psychologist. So be it Modupeko, be it other schools, you must make provision for psychologists because of emotional issues that the child might be having from their various homes. So with the help of the psychologist, the child will be able to be stabilized and being able to cope in the new environment he or she finds in himself. But there is no any school you can actually point to that you can actually find a psychologist. I don't know of private schools, but our government schools, there is no place where you can say. So it will always be someone, maybe a GNC person who you find, but you won't see a professional gongon in a psychologist. And we also need to talk about people that are also orthopedically impaired. That means with the amputee. Oh. So yes, so they are also another category, and I have not seen any school in Lagos that actually cater for them solely. But the school that is somehow trying to do something similar to that is at Tondaolu, at Surulere area. But it's still more like a school of handicap, because in that same school, you have the IDs there, that's intellectually disabled, and then we also have people that are also orthopedically impaired, maybe once with crutches in that school. But it's supposed to be a separate school, so that teachers that are actually meant for these people will be deployed to those schools. Because their own way of learning too is also different. Because like someone that doesn't have so how will the person write? So you need to train the person how to use leg or maybe mouth or to write. So there should be a special provision for the person. Then, when in such schools, you should have a physiotherapist. That's in the school for the orthopedically impaired. You should have a physiotherapist there.